you ultimately, if somebody looks bad,
Right.
and you work on the flat side of the street, you're out of the sun and everything. If they look bad, you're not going to do much to fix it. What I usually do is I'll do certain odds and ends within the camera to make things a little bit better for them. But the truth of the matter is, you can't fix that. So, in old school Hollywood terms, they'd stuff an arc up somebody's ass and turn it on.
Welcome back to crafttruck.com and our series Through the Lens. Over the past 120 years, the institution, medium, and business of film has seen many masterful artists. Known to the masses typically are the writers, the directors, the producers, and the stars. But sometimes a craftsman, a costume designer, an editor, a cinematographer, for example, will transcend the practice and leave their stamp on the medium. And we're sitting with one such person today, a man that has a career spanned at least 3 legendary directors, half a dozen masterpieces, and I mean masterpieces, not hits or blockbusters, but rather masterpieces. The Godfather of modern cinematography, Mr. Willis. Thank you for being here.
Oh, delighted. I can throw mud at people now.
Yeah, well, that was my next step.
Yeah, right.
Something we have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
You look at the history of film,
Right.
the images.
Right.
There's some extremely memorable images from cinema history. The sled at the end of Cain. Dorothy and her friend skipping down the yellow brick road. Yeah. The split face in Persona. The shot of Marlon Brando at the beginning of The Godfather with dark pools under his eyes. And a man being asked essentially for blood justice.
Right.
Did you know that you were making history?
Basically, you don't know any of those things when you're working. What you do is focus up on what it is you're doing and do what you want to do to make what you're doing at that moment work.
Right.
I've never thought of anything as being iconic. Usually if somebody finishes a movie and says, this is the greatest movie we ever made, we had a great time, usually a piece of junk because they were too busy having a good time.
What was so innovative about that shot? I mean, the easy answer is my understanding it's a wide, big, top soft, top source of light, but I don't know.
Well, you're looking for the formula. There is no formula. The formula comes out of you. So whether it's a top light or whether it's some other thing, it just happened to be that's what was necessary to do this particular movie or this particular scene. So I did it. But the bottom line is the design behind all of that, or the thinking behind the design of all of that, came out of Marlon Brando, because Marlon had this makeup stuff that he was using. So top light seemed to be the most effective way of dealing with him. You don't really want to see his eyes. There was a big Hollywood rush about, you can't see his eyes. That's right, you can't. Until they were revealed a little bit later, I began opening things up a bit. But you can't just do it for him. You have to extend it into the whole feel of the movie. So that's what I did.
You don't even think to call me Godfather. Instead, you come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you ask me to do murder. Money.
I ask you for justice.
That is not justice. Your daughter is still alive.
And the principal idea in this first was to start in this cave-like environment, this blackness, and slowly begin to reveal it and then pop around, and there he is. The essence of this kind of bottom feeder in this room cut against this wedding that was going on the outside. So we had this juxtaposition of this bright hysteria, all these Italians with their food, wedding cakes arriving, blah, 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 and you cut back to the room, and we're back in this kind of hole, right? So, it was 20 minutes before the movie started, I decided what to do, and I was thinking about it for so long. So it was only about 20 minutes before the movie started that I decided how the movie ultimately should look overall.
What's the matter? The trigger too tight?
I don't know, my ears.
Yeah, I left it noisy. That way it scares any pain in the ass innocent bystanders away. All right, you shot them both. Now what do you do?
Sit down, finish my dinner.
Come on, kid. Don't fool around.
Come on, you think I make my sister a widow? I'm godfather to your son, Carl. Go ahead, drink. Drink.
You have to know your craft in order to define an idea, in order to take something and put it up on the screen. If you don't have any craft, you can't do that.
Right.
So if you have a lot of craft, it sets you free to put things together the way you want them. So I just think about what it should look like.
Look like, right.
And I don't care what anybody else did. I'll do what I think is appropriate for the movie. You know, I'll do whatever I think is appropriate for the movie.
To tell the story.
To tell the story,
Right.
exactly. And a lot of women didn't like it in the business. They would say, oh God, he's not so good with women, which wasn't true.
With lighting women?
No, with lighting women, but which wasn't true. But women would take a bath lighting-wise with me if they were in the middle of something in a scene, and the story became more important than how do I look. So they'd have to. But when it was important, I fixed it, you know. But
Fixed it.
yeah,
Interesting.
they'd look good. Yeah,
Interesting turn of phrase.
yeah, right, yeah.
Okay.
Too pretty.
Too pretty.
Too pretty.
She's
Now that's
kind of
the coloring.
exotic.
That's the
the
coloring.
coloring is great. Yeah, I don't know.
It's not quite it, though.
No, not really. Hello. Can I see your hands?
Thank you. So funny.
Yeah. No.
No.
I see what you're saying. Well, I appreciate you edifying, you know, like, you don't, that's not the way you think. Like you're saying,
No.
that's the formula. There is no formula.
There is no formula.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everybody tried to get the formula because everybody said, "I got to do it. I got to shoot. I got a call from somebody who was a famous DP at that point. He says, "I got a call. Somebody wants to shoot this movie, and they want it to look like The Godfather. What did you do?"
I'm sorry.
That,
yes.
that was my reaction on the telephone.
Right,
I said, "I'm sorry.
I shot the movie."
I said, "I can't really tell you that." He said, "Well, there are no secrets in this business." I said, "No, there aren't." I said, "But I can't. There's no way I can explain this to you because there is no process. There is no formula."
Can you tell us who that DP was or no?
No.
Okay, fair
I don't
enough.
know. Yes. Go on now, anyway.
Just tell us about you growing up and deciding to get into movies and how it, into camera and stuff like that.
I didn't really want to be a DP. When I was little, I grew up with my father, who was a makeup man at Warner's on the East Coast during the Depression. And so I've sort of always been around the business, so to speak. But when I was young, I wanted to be an actor, actually. Thank God I didn't do that. It wasn't, I'm not, but it's more death-defying than being a DP or anything else in the business, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then I cut all the nonsense out of it. I finally went into the service, and I got into a motion picture unit in the service. So I used a lot of government time and money and film and everything to learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought I did. Then when I got out, I realized I didn't know much, because then I had to get a job. So the bottom line of it, I got into the union, the East Coast unit at that point. And then I had to work my way up. You know, I started as an assistant and blah, blah, blah.
What did you pick up while you were assisting? Did you see things and go, this can be better, I can change this, or was it?
No, I never really looked at I never really dealt with photography, quote, what was going from aesthetic point of view.
Right.
I was busy learning an awful lot about mechanics, technical stuff, and then learning to be a good assistant and all that kind of stuff. And then of course you pick up all this stuff from working with different cameramen about how to do this and how to do that and how to do that and how to do this. All of which was useful at one level or another, but most of it was trashed in my mind when I started working. but not at first. The first thing everybody does when they start is they start doing what they've seen other people do,
Right.
which is generally
Mimicry. And,
yeah,
You know. Yeah.
and it's mostly not good, you know. So, but once you push past that, and you start looking at things and say, I think this should look like. And what about just one light bulb on in there moving across the window and over here against the line and then back? That would be good. Well, it's good for you. Looks great on the screen because everyone who's paying for this,
The Willis.
yes, major coronaries going on. I mean, the first week of The Godfather, the opening scene with this guy in this room, it was like.
Did you have to get on the phone? Did your agent have to get on the phone?
No, the producer was funny. He says, is this too dark? I said, no. I said, no. I said, when you make a cut, you don't make a cut so that you can linger on this cut. This cut is designed to work either ahead or in back of or next to other cuts. So I said, you have to think of it in terms of everything. I said, when you see the rest of it that goes with this, I think you'll feel better about it. This is how you have to explain everything, because you work in a hallway with nothing but a lot of dark cuts of people firing guns at each other, and you send that all to California and said, what's happening? We can't
tell the story.
Oh, yeah, right.
What's going on?
Yeah. So that's the first reaction.
So you're referring to the hospital sequence.
Yeah, or anything you shoot in any movie.
Who are the guys that you admired the most? That you said, wow. What that guy does blows me away. Like or that person.
Well, I'd rather answer that question by saying, I won't give you a specific name, but what I did do, which I became very enamored of and began to fall in love with actually, was I'd go to the movies. I grew up in the movies. I was always watching movies. I began to enjoy like great black and white movies on the screen, Most of what I learned about cutting movies, by the way, and how to put movies together, I learned from watching movies.
Right.
And you learn a lot if you watch movies that were made in the 30s or 40s.
Yep.
You'll see a shot of two people arguing or talking about making love. Boom. Head to head. It goes on for 5 minutes. There's no cut in it, It plays really well, so why would you cut? Right. Or they use one cut at the end as a button, and that's it. So I learned a lot about that kind of structure from watching a lot of earlier directors and earlier DPs. But I have nobody that I thought was, although there were several out there, that I enjoyed. But I think if I think back on it, I enjoyed black and white movies more than I like color movies. Color, when you work in color, it's a burden. You have to deal with color. If you don't deal with it, it turns into something awful.
This is what I think in the movie Visions of Light, which you were also in. They talk about this. They talk about the fact that there's this term which I don't really understand, where they'll say cinematography is always 30 years behind of where it should be, because the minute they were starting to master, this frame, it got wide, and then when it got wide, they added color, and now they're adding 3D, and it's constantly going into these.
Right.
Are these extra elements burden? Do they just make it harder and harder?
Well, they are a burden because the major problem with all of this is that, I think color's a burden because, as I said, you have to deal with it. You can't just let everybody put everything on they want and paint the walls. It has to be coordinated and focused. Otherwise, it looks like an explosion at a Sherwin-Williams store. So you've got to be careful,
Right.
But the rest of it, usually it's a disease that springs up in the business because nobody's going. Nobody wants to see it. Well, how come? Well, it's not wide enough, or it's not big enough. All those things are really, in my mind, not the real reason. The real reason is there's no narrative.
Right.
We're in a world now and in a business where people perceive complexity as good. It's not good. Complexity is not good. People don't understand the elegance of simplicity. There are very few people left that do understand it. The whole idea is, if you take a sophisticated idea, reduce it to the simplest possible terms so that it's accessible to everybody, and don't get simple mixed up with simplistic. That's not it. It's how you mount and present something. that makes it engaging.
Can you define difference between simple and simplistic in your mind?
Well, simplistic is doing it badly. I mean, if you hit somebody in the face with a pie, I mean, that's simplistic. Simple is your choices. It's what, one light coming through a window might be quite beautiful. That's all you need. You don't need 6 other lights, because why are you doing all of this? By habit or by need? It's the same thing in telling a story, or it's the same thing in making cuts within the structure of the story. So usually what happens now is they'll take a simple standalone idea and tie it into knots, until nobody knows what the hell's going on. And, as long as they blow up something every 20 minutes. And I thought, well, this is terrible in movies. So
they're not actually playing out the drama that
no, and what happens is the mystery that you happen to be watching becomes not a mystery within the structure of the story, it becomes a mystery to you. What is this we're watching? I need more coffee, and you get up and leave.
Everyone talks about the brilliant shot. Not everyone. A lot of people talk about the brilliant shot from Conrad Hull Sr. in Cold Blood. The rain coming down the face, of doing the crying for the actor.
Right.
I compare that to, personally, my favorite shot that you lensed that I can think of off the top of my head, which is the single on Fonda at the end of Klute.
Right.
When she's sitting in the office,
Right.
dim, everyone has left this textile plant, and the killer's there playing
Right.
the recording of
Right.
what she's been trying to
Right.
forget, which
Right.
is her being beaten
Right.
several years previous.
She starts crying.
And she starts crying. I mean, yes, in this case, the actor did the crying as opposed to the lighting doing the crying. But to me, that moment is absolutely, it's breathtaking.
Yeah, it's good. And I'm glad you see it that way, because the way it was laid out, the way I laid it out was to head into the scene when she's looking at him, she's looking left to right, and Charles Durning was on the right side of the screen.
Yes.
Anyway, but when Daly's first hit the screen, she was looking at a point where you couldn't quite see it, and she says, "You can't see anything." I said, "Yes, you can. Hang on a second here." So, we got her around so that at the moment that was really important, when she really started running, we saw it very clearly. So, but that's another thing you have to think of, what it is you want to see, and when you want to see it. So, I like that moment a lot, actually.
What the hell? It's their money. I don't care. I'll swing from a shower rod and whistle Maytime. Except, this guy really freaked out on it.
But you cannot identify this man as Tom Gruneman.
I can't identify him as anybody. So, is that it?
I can't find Alan Page without your help.
I told you you wouldn't find him.
If I can't find her, I can't find him. And if I can't find him, then you're in trouble. So what do you say? Okay?
It's gonna cost. Time is money.
Okay, well, I can pay you $100.
So on the lines of what you want to see when you want to see it, is an apocryphal story about Woody and you sitting in a room, I think it was for Manhattan, it may have been Stardust or something, and him saying, "Gordon, you can't see the actors." To which you said, "Yeah, but don't worry, you can hear them."
Well, that was based on it was based on us doing a piece in Manhattan where he and Keaton are in her apartment. I think they came into her apartment after a walk around the thing, and he's whining about getting something. I can't remember what. And we were talking about the blocking. I said, "Well, all right, let her deliver this, and you leave, and then she leaves, you come back in, you deliver it, so that the scene is moving this way." And I said, which they picked up on, and we used it a lot of other times too. But he said, "Yeah, but I'll be off screen, you won't see me." I said, "Yeah, but they'll hear you." And a light bulb went off in his head, and he thought, "This is great, I can, and it was better actually to do it that way than to be nose to nose on the scene.
What's it? Are you still hung up on Yale? Is that the problem?
Oh, I've got too many problems. I'm not the person to get involved with. I'm trouble.
Hey, honey, Trouble is my middle name.
What do you think?
It is. Actually, my middle name is Mortimer. I'm kidding.
Does this also influence the later scenes where, I think it was Manhattan, where we're looking down the hallways at split offices?
Oh, one's way down at one end of the hallway, and
yeah.
Well, I was designed to put this kind of space between these two people while they were, talking.
Driving down the hallway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Genius.
And same way with the apartment. And
well, are we talking about the split screen now? Not split screen, but basically the two sets.
You're talking about the Hemingway one where she's
she's in the couch
right.
and he's
right. I walked into the room, the location we were going to shoot in, and I said, "Gee, this is great." I said, "How would you like to do this in one piece so that we can?" Which she enjoyed doing things in one piece.
Right.
I said, "Look at the way this is laid out." So I said, "You stuff her over there and you over here." And I said, "You can just unbutton things as you come down the steps and then finally end up over here." I said, "It would be very nice presentation on the scene." So, set it. It was like perfect, to work that way. So
it's a perfect shot.
It's one of those things where you'd say the scene carries the shot or the shot carries the scene. We're not pressing an issue here, so let's just do it this way. Or you could get a cut of her like this, doing that. You can get a cut of him coming out the door and all the way down the steps and back to her doing this. But you don't have the same kind of magic in the scene.
And it's a wonderful, we're having a great time and all that, but you're a kid, and I never want you to forget that. You're going to meet a lot of terrific men in your life, and, I want you to enjoy me, my wry sense of humor and astonishing sexual technique, but never forget that, you got your whole life ahead of you.
I've noticed two schools of cinematographers when it comes to mingling work with family. There's the ones that are basically like, I need to take less movies or do whatever I have to spend more time with my family and my kids. And there's the ones that are just like going,
right,
knees to the wall, just nonstop,
right.
trying to,
Right.
Did you very consciously try and adjust your working schedule when you were?
No. And the reason I say no was that I always felt I was lucky to have a job, you know what I'm saying? So when one job would go away, there's always a certain amount of terror in your heart that nobody's going to call me and I'm never going to get another job again, that kind of thing. Actors say that too.
Well, actors say it all the time.
Yeah.
But you actually felt that way.
Well, I felt that way. It was one point I was shooting like 1.5 or 2 features a year at one point. And you don't think about it when you're doing it. But I've also had like 6 months off, without any shooting at all. And
the phone isn't ringing for you even? I mean, you're one of the...
No, that was early on, of course. But still, even though you have those experiences, but I tell you what happens. When you do certain kinds of movies with certain kinds of people in a certain kind of way, you automatically separate yourself from the business as a whole. So you're not on the list to say, call so and then him too. You're not on that list.
Right.
So you get on.
You've niched yourself or whatever.
Yeah. So you get on a list with people who actually want to do certain kinds of movies in a certain kind of way.
Right.
As opposed to, get me somebody. I want to
stylish.
I want to get out of here on Friday and Saturday, and we have to be done in 8 weeks. I've shot those too, but that's not why they usually did not hire me for that.
They hired you to be an artist.
To design the movie.
Design the movie, okay.
Structurally or visually, at any rate. But all the directors that I worked with received and took in a lot of input, wanted a lot of input. And
I just want to say input. Are we talking about blocking? Are we talking about the performances? Are we talking about the script? Are we talking about cutting and is it minutia or is it macro or is it all of the above?
It's all the above except the acting part. I never dealt with that. Although I had good relationships with actors, I never got tangled up with that. And of course, I never get tangled up with the editing after the fact.
Right.
But in order to shoot, you have to know how to cut in order to shoot well.
Right.
Otherwise you're shooting a lot of stuff. That's a lesson for directors, which I wish more of them would learn. You don't need the cut of the doorknob and the cut of the window and the cut of medium shot, long shot, close-up, over the shoulder. So That's dump truck directing, what I call it. They take all this stuff and then they throw it into the editorial room, and the editor fashions the movie. Well, I never functioned that way.
What's the version where it's not about just getting more and more and more? It's about putting pieces together that will, is that what it is? Putting pieces together that will elegantly cut together and that tell the story properly, or how would you define it?
Yeah, that's basically it. But I'll just take a mythical movie here that we're working on, right? Okay. You read the script, you break down the script in your own mind, you go over it carefully with the director to see what he wants.
Yep.
Some directors don't want to do that at all. But finally, what it boils down to is you walk into the first set of the day, or whatever it happens to be.
Yep.
And what I do is, you have, let's say, 3 pages, 2 pages. You say, well, how's the scene going to work? How many cuts do we need to make it work? What's the scene all about? And blah, blah, blah. And it may turn out that 1 cut does the whole scene. Effectively now. This has nothing to do with economics. Or you may need 3 cuts, or you may need 4 cuts.
So an example would be, I know we're talking mythical, but to get into the practical.
Yeah.
Manhattan,
right.
Woody and Diane walking down the street,
Right.
and then walk and talk. And you just carry the whole scene into the convenience store where he gets something and she gets something. And this is the first time we see them actually, like, starting to, like there's friction between them, and now all of a sudden they're starting to flirt a little bit.
Right, which leads into the shot on the bridge at the end. Yeah, I love those shots because it takes a long time to set them up, but actually it works effectively in the end because when you start shooting, it goes fast.
What kind of dog you got?
The worst. It's a dachshund. You know, I mean, it's a penis substitute for me.
Oh, I would have thought that in your case a Great Dane.
How'd you get past the security?
I walked right past. What are you telling me? That you're gonna leave Emily? Is this true? And run away with the winner of the Zelda Fitzgerald Emotional Maturity Award?
Look, I love her. I've always loved her.
What kind of crazy friend are you?
I'm a good friend. I introduced the two of you, remember?
Why? What was the point? I don't understand that.
Because I thought you liked her.
Yeah, I do like her. Now we both like her.
Yeah, well, I liked her first.
Well, let me get right to the point then. I don't think you ought to go. I think I made a big mistake, and I would prefer it if you didn't go.
Isaac.
I mean it. I know it looks real bad now, but, are you seeing anybody? Are you going with anybody?
No.
Annie Hall is known for being this movie where DPs around the world say, it looks like it's not lit. Do you realize how hard that is to do?
Okay, it's an example. It's a poor example in my mind.
It's
a poor example in my mind, but I'm glad they feel that way. I mean, a large percentage of my movies look that way.
No question.
Okay, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. No.
Annie Hall, right?
Annie and I broke up, and I still can't get my mind around that. I keep sifting the pieces of the relationship through my mind and examining my life and trying to figure out where did the screw up come, And a year ago we were in love, and it's funny, I'm not a morose type. I'm not a depressive character. I was a reasonably happy kid, I guess. I was brought up in Brooklyn during World War II.
We're talking about one of the greatest movies ever made, a movie that many people can watch over and over and over again.
Enjoy it.
And it is so committed to this guy's disastrous relationships and the humor and the ridiculousness of every situation he gets into. And I guess my question is, with the walk and talk with him and Robbins going down the street, Jew, and it starts they're probably that big in the frame, and then slowly they come into it and we track with them.
Right.
Are there lights there?
No.
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 Just, I mean, how do you do it? Maybe
well, I would never. No. I mean, you have to see what you're looking at.
Right.
First of all, I don't shoot by habit. If it works that way, it works that way. I mean, that was my idea. So let's just do it in one, and we'll stuff you way up the street, and we'll hear you to begin with, and then you'll materialize. And no, there are no lights there. There are no lights under the marquee where these two guys are saying,
Hey, I'll be singer. This is half the cast of the
None
Godfather.
of that.
I'll be singer. Really, I'll be singing a TV
This is our faces.
I'll be singer over here.
It's all right, fellas. Jesus, what you do? Come by way of the Panama Canal?
I'm in a bad mood, okay?
Bad mood? I'm standing with the cast of The Godfather.
You're gonna have to learn to deal with it.
I'm dealing with two guys named Cheech.
When he's walking across the street and saying, "How do you do it?" Well, I'm boring and she's boring too, and he's talking to Is there any?
Inside the lobby, there's some lighting, but
Oh,
most exteriors, I don't say I never do it, but in that particular case, I rarely put anything up.
Seems like old times here with
Thank you.
You were sensational. I mean, I told you that if you stuck to it, you would be great, and you were sensational.
Just on the subject of working with Woody Allen directly,
Yeah.
I mean, very few people in the history of cinema have achieved what he's achieved.
Right.
I believe he was quoted as saying once that he really didn't understand photography that much until he met you.
Right.
And you look at his films, Bananas, Sleeper, the earlier films, of course, which are made fun of in Stardust Memories, where he says, we like your earlier funny films.
Right.
They are, basically gag films. Take the Money and Run as a gag film, right? You go from joke to joke to joke, and they're brilliant jokes.
Right.
And then in Love and Death, all of a sudden, which I don't think you shot, all of a sudden he starts to use the camera in a more meaningful way, for lack of better words.
Right.
What was that relationship like? How did you? I mean, did he look up to you? Did he how did it?
Well.